across the globe, Ben Norris, Rob McKnight, and David Robinson.
Ben, Rob, and Robbo. News, reviews, entertainment too. It's the Ben, Rob, and Robbo. Ben, Rob, and Robbo Show. Ben, Rob, and Robbo Show.
Welcome to the Ben, Rob and Robbo Show. Here's Rob McKnight.
Hello there and welcome to another edition of the Ben, Rob and Robbo Show as we come to the end of week one. Robbo and Ben, can you believe we've made it this far? Ben, it's been a big week.
Oh, I tell you what, and we're all still alive. I mean, you look a little bit like Herman Munster, but that's probably due to your lighting.
Oh, wow.
Actually, I've gone a bit green. We'll fix that up at the moment,
We'll fix it in post.
So, yeah, exactly.
This is live. It's live TV.
Every time we do all these checks. But anyway, Robbo, how are you feeling after this big week?
I'm loving it. 4 days in, it feels like 4 years, but that's all right. We're still having a lot of fun. And please tell me I don't sound like a Dalek again.
I think we're getting a little edge of it. But look, there is a lot to discuss. We've got Stevie Jacobs coming up. He's talking about his new radio gig and some of his fun memories of the Today Show. And remember, he was in All Together Now. We're also talking to Joe Casamento, who's going to look at what's happening in the film world. Cinemas are shut down. Are films still coming? Are they being delayed, or will we be able to stream them? She's got the lowdown on all of that, plus lots of hot topics to discuss, and why don't we get into it? And there is disturbing footage has been released showing a woman deliberately coughing on a police officer in England. The woman was being arrested for being in a street yelling and holding 2 bricks. The disgusting act was caught on the officer's body cam. Take a look at this.
I come round the corner, you're standing in the street.
Yeah,
We're there, you're standing in the street. You just listen to us, going absolutely berserk with 2 bricks in your hand.
I did.
Right, that is an affray in itself, so that's why you've been arrested, alright? Take everything out of what he's done and what he said, that's why you've been arrested, alright?
Anyway, he's not getting
Now,
arrested.
well, let us investigate what's gone on there, right? In the meantime,
Ah, me head!
yeah, sit yourself down. What I'll say to you is, right, you're going on like that, and I swear to God you're going to jail, right?
I got to say, Robbo, I think the officer reacted in such a superb way. This woman is vile, disgusting, and I am so over people being able to have a go at the police force and the people that try to look after us and behave in this manner. What are your thoughts?
I completely agree with you. It's outrageous now in this day and age where a cough or a sneeze can be used as a weapon. I think we're all pretty understanding about what's going on, so there's no excuse for what this woman did. She did get 21 weeks jail time for this, as well as the other offences that she was eventually charged for, which originated in her first arrest there. This is disgusting, and people know, and you can see it was directed. It was an act upon the police officer. It was absolutely disgusting, and she probably should have got more time for mine.
I couldn't agree. Ben, I remember a few years ago there was the incident with a Muslim woman who wouldn't identify herself to police. She had the face covering on, and police are in a tough position because they can be accused of racism in situations like that. Further back, there was an incident on Bondi Beach where police shot back a man who was wielding a knife at them. I think he was French from memory. And the police got in trouble for that. People were hounding the police for killing him. They have to protect themselves. They should not die on the job or be abused or, in this pandemic, face coronavirus because people are assholes.
Well, exactly right. I mean, I thought you'd played the wrong clip. I thought it was an audition for the new Married at First Sight because I thought that behaviour was a little bit outrageous. But all jokes aside, I think, the police at the moment all around the world are doing an amazing job. And the fact that people are treating them like this is absolutely disgusting. And how amazing is it these days making people accountable by having video footage of these police officers? I think that these cams that they have on all police officers in the UK at the moment are brilliant, and I think it should be making people more aware of their behaviour.
Rob, if I could quickly cut in, I'm so sorry to cut you off there. I think that this is kind of a timely moment to give our respects to the families of those 4 policemen killed in Victoria yesterday afternoon when they just stopped someone for speeding. It was hit by a refrigeration truck. and they all lost their lives, as we've seen across the news throughout this morning and this afternoon. It's a really sad time, and I think this is right. Exactly what you're saying, Rob. Cops are there to protect us, but they're also there to protect themselves. And when this kind of thing happens in Britain, and then also that tragic accident here in Victoria yesterday, it's really sad. It really puts a spotlight on the fact that, yes, they are here to protect us, and they do a brilliant job, and we're very lucky to have them.
Look, and I'm not saying the entire police force is perfect. You know, we've seen situations of corruption.
Sure.
We've seen certainly some bad acts by police. I think there's been a bit of heavy-handedness in New South Wales with the policing of the social distancing laws when people haven't been around anyone and still getting in trouble. But on the whole, we have to respect the uniform. But let's move on to our next topic. And thanks to an emergency sitting of the Queensland government and bipartisan support, renters are now protected from eviction. The tenants must prove that their income has been severely affected, and if approved, the landlords will be forced to honour the agreement for 6 months. Ben, Premier Anastasia Palaszczuk has said that these are extraordinary measures for extraordinary times. What do you think? Do you think that we should be protecting renters at all costs?
Look, I think that what she's trying to do is put some staples in place to make sure that people aren't taking the mickey with what's going on. I think we've talked about this earlier in the week, and I think there's two sides of the coin when it comes to protecting people who are renting and people who are the renters, the tenants and the landlords. I think that when it first came out and I was talking about the naivety of asking your tenants to do the right thing, I think this is just a step in the right way to make sure the process is a little bit easier for everybody.
Robbo, you've been a renter all your life. I have some concerns about blanket rules, okay? The problem I could foresee here is that renters, what if they're really bad tenants? What if it's nothing to do with coronavirus that you want to remove these tenants, but they're destroying the house or something like that? Does a blanket rule fit everything?
You know, weirdly, you use that example because my father used that example this morning when I was talking to him about what we were going to talk about today on the show. There can't be blanket rules. No, of course not. So people will still and should be evicted if they are doing the wrong thing. But I think this law is meant to protect the people who are good tenants, who are paying their rent, but have been severely affected by coronavirus. But absolutely not. If you're trashing the place, if you're not paying your rent, but you've got the means to do so, absolutely you should be evicted. And I don't think that these rules apply to bad tenants. They just apply to people who have had a rough trot with the coronavirus. I do think, though, that it needs to be heavily regulated, and you really do need to prove that your income has been affected by the coronavirus, and so many of us has.
And look, this is a really difficult situation. As you said, we have talked about this on Monday's episode, I think it was, where we face a situation where not all landlords are evil. They're trying to pay their mortgages. Renters are losing work because they're not, if they're freelancers, they're not able to work because of the coronavirus. And so it's not like it's good versus evil. It's black and white here. People are suffering across the board, and hopefully, Scott Morrison has got the right idea when he says people have to work it out. Not always that simple, but I don't know what the final solution here is, because there might be people taking advantage of it.
But it's a step in the right direction. That's what they're trying to do. I think the most important thing by putting this part of information out is, I think, dampening how many people are going to take advantage of it. Sometimes it's best to just put out a blanket rule like this and then investigate those circumstances if they need to be. I mean, not everyone's going to do the right thing, and we can't expect people to do the right thing. But what we can do is investigate each situation. But as I said, I think this was just a quick way of them being able to put out a piece of information that's probably going to stop people taking advantage.
Indeed. Well, let's move on. And a couple who've been trying to have a baby for 43 years, yes, you heard that right, 43 years, have finally been successful. 68-year-old Margaret and 70-year-old Noah welcomed twins earlier this month thanks to IVF treatment. But not everyone is thrilled with the arrival, with some doctors saying it was reckless. Robbo, are they too old to have children, or should we just keep our noses out of it?
I think they are. I think this is a tough one, because I don't have kids. I don't have a massive want to have kids. But if you've had that want and you really want them to be part of your life, I could understand how that can become, where you become very obsessed with that and want that to happen. I do think, however, you've got a responsibility to go, if I'm 68 and my husband is 70. Are we up to the job? And that's not a bad thing to say that they're not. But, you know, kids are very demanding. At the same time, this is the thing I always worry about, is when the kids grow up, there's no parents there. They it's potentially that they won't have their mum or their dad, you know, even when they're just starting primary school or high school. Obviously, we wish them all the best, but that's my concern, is you're bringing kids into the world and kids need their parents, and I think this is actually selfish.
Ben, I actually think the doctor who approved this and did the treatment should be struck off the list.
What? This is my biggest problem with the world right now, is everybody sitting back like a mummy blogger, having their opinions about what other people are doing in their lives. Like, seriously, get a life. These people have been trying to get their own life for a very long time, which involved children. And I don't necessarily think we know all the facts. These could be some very healthy 67-year-old people. You know, they may not be there for the entirety of these people's lives, but my biggest concern is my set falling down behind me, which is okay. But my biggest concern with this, though, is people jumping in and having too much to say about something that they know nothing about.
Well, here's the problem, though, Ben. We do talk about topics, you know, like, and this is a topic that is catching attention around the world. And, you know, I don't hold back from having an opinion on this, because I look at this and I know within me that if I was 68 years old, I'm 46, and let me tell you, I'm not having any more kids. You know, I'm exhausted from the kids that I have. And so...
But that's your story.
100%.
That's your story. Like,
yes, but the thing is that let's give them the benefit of the doubt and say they get to 86. So they get they get their kids to 20 years old, right? So
yeah, right.
Their kids at 20, the parents are going to be very frail, you know, and, you know, like, they've basically just got them to adulthood and they're on their own. And you might be able to say, well, they're adults, they can fend for themselves. But at the end of the day, that parental advice, that parental love is something we want to cherish for as long as we possibly can. The idea that you just get to adulthood and you've lost your parents is heartbreaking, I'm sure, for anyone who's been through that. And I have not, but I can't imagine that it's setting a child up for a good life, knowing that there's a finality. You know, accidents happen all the time. I get that. People lose their parents, but that's through events that can't be helped. You are subjecting these children to, I think, some psychological damage, because the parents could go in 10 years and they'll be 10-year-olds without a parent.
I get that. I can understand the circumstance, but I lost my father at 26 years of age. He, you know, people would expect to live forever and, you know, parent people forever. Different things can happen. We don't necessarily know. I mean, these people, anyone could get hit by a bus tomorrow. These two people have been to see a doctor, and we're very quick to claim that this doctor has done the wrong thing by them. Maybe the doctor has done a little bit of investigative work to make sure that these people are healthy and capable. Maybe we shouldn't be jumping to too many conclusions without knowing all the facts.
What I will say is, okay, we're talking a lot about their death, but let's talk about, I've got a lot of nephews and nieces, they're all under 10, especially little Queenie, who refers to herself in third person, bless her, runs around like a crazy person. They might be healthy and they might last a while, but what about when you've got a toddler? Now they've got two toddlers, they've got twins, there are two toddlers running around, and you've got a 17-year-old man, or by that time 72, she will be 70, and they've got to run around after these kids constantly. It's selfish, it's bad, and that's why doctors are saying that they shouldn't have been given IVF treatment, they should have been told not to do it, because it's just, and think about the age gap as well. You're talking generational age, like massive generational age gap there. I just think it's very sad for the kids, and sad for them as well. I feel sorry for them that they didn't get to have kids, you know, much earlier in their life. I think that's a tragedy for them. But I just think there should have been possibly more thought into us, and that's my opinion.
Which is what you're here to give us, Robbo. Let's move on. And it's a new age, which means there's new ways of getting embarrassingly caught out. A Welsh minister has been caught swearing about one of his colleagues while on a Zoom conference call. Vaughan Gethling thought his mic was on mute. Now he doesn't appear on screen, but his audio is pretty clear. Have a look at the woman he's talking about, Jenny Rathburn. She's in the red, top line second from the left. Have a look.
I tell you what, I know Jenny is regularly right at the end. It's like, what the matter with him? I expect Di to be a little bit.
Turn his microphone off.
Now, I've got to say, there are people calling for this guy to be sacked. I have very strong opinions about this, but Ben, I'm going to let you go first.
Line 1, position 3, basket case. I'm just going to say, I would make this mistake every day of the week. And does this necessarily mean that he has done the wrong thing? Let me tell you about people. People love to discuss, you know, their thoughts and opinions with their partners at home. And I think that's where the lines are getting blurred very simply here when it comes to the coronavirus, is that people are working from home. It's very easy to slip back into the natural language that you might be using. And can I just say, when these mics aren't rolling, I'm pretty sure we've all said some things about each other that we don't want the other person to hear. Does it necessarily need to be taken so seriously? Absolutely not. I think people need to just lighten up. I mean, if he was, say, Joe Exotic and he was in the middle of saying he was hiring a hitman for Carol Baskin, I would completely understand the situation. But look, he just mouthed off when he shouldn't have, and let's just be thanking that he was wearing pants when it was happening.
Robbo, should he be sacked?
No, of course he shouldn't. This age of cancel culture bull... You said arsehole before, so I'm going to say shit, bullshit. That really just put the spotlight on what you did, because you probably tried to let that slide. Anyway, we're doing the same thing, aren't we? At least we're not calling each other that, not on camera anyway. And I think you remember a lot of the rehearsals we were doing, you would say something to me, and I'd forget that I was on camera, so I'd go... But then go realise, oh yeah, he can see me there. He shouldn't be sacked. It's a normal thing. Move on. How many people can say that they've never talked about someone and then turned around and seen that they are there and gone, oh,
exactly right, Robbo. Exactly.
Who
right.
cares? He said an F word. He does what we all need to do and what we all do sometimes to vent. Cancelling him is absolutely rubbish.
I couldn't agree more. The fact is, you're asking someone to use technology that they're not used to doing. You know, I can't imagine these members of parliament are used to being on a Zoom conference call. They think they've got the technology working. They've walked out a shot or whatever they've done, hasn't realised his mic's on, and now we want to sack him because we're forcing him to use technology that he's not used to using, and he's saying what he would say in private. He didn't go and attack this lady. He gave a he had a private conversation, which unfortunately has been picked up. And like you, Robbo, I'm sick of the cancer culture. You know, we can't just cancel everything because we don't like something. And the guy made a mistake, and I'm sure he's horrified. But he was obviously frustrated, as politicians are. And politicians say a lot worse behind the scenes, you know.
That's right. That's very true. Yeah.
Anyway.
Very true. Great point, Rob. That's exactly right. Look, he didn't really say anything disparaging about her. It was just, you know, kind of letting off steam and things like that, and that's okay. I totally agree with the technology thing. We're all not used to this kind of stuff, and we all expect our mics to be muted when we're not talking, but that's not what was happening here. He has apologized. He's also said that it's a unnecessary distraction, which is that's all it needs. Move on then. Yeah, he apologized, shouldn't have done it. Unnecessary distraction, bigger problems to fight about, and that's the thing. There are bigger problems to worry about.
That's certainly true, Robbo. Let's move on. And with clubs, pubs, sport, and even the public picnic shut down, people are increasingly replacing them with worrying vices. As a YouGov poll shows that some at-home gambling has increased by 67%, drinking has also gone up. With no end in sight, experts are worried that with loneliness and economic stress, it could become a massive problem. Ben, it's great the spotlight is being put on this problem. What's the solution?
Well, in actual fact, I think it's actually kind of worked out in people's favour, you know, with people not being able to find gambling as easy. A person suggested to me the other day, which I thought was really interesting, the idea of banning online gaming during this time. Because, look, people are going to look for entertainment in different places, and people are going to be having a little bit more time. You know, having something like gambling seems too much of a risk for people at this point.
Why?
And is gambling a necessity? Is it a necessity?
No.
Why can't people
It's
take
not a
responsibility
necessity.
for themselves? Yes, there's always going to be an element that go too far and do the wrong thing. But, you know, like that's like saying, well, people behave badly when they're drunk. Let's have prohibition. Let's get rid of all alcohol. You know, like the fact is, we don't live in a nanny state, and we shouldn't live in a nanny state.
But Rob, you know, look, we're talking about very different things. Like, as I always have the belief that you have to look at things differently. When it comes to alcohol, yeah, I don't think that people should be censoring the alcohol purchases. I think that does come down to the individual. But when you can see the astronomical figures that are being printed when it comes to gambling, I think maybe people should be stepping in with that. Like, it's not a necessity. I guess alcohol isn't either, but I still feel like these vices are very different. Well, you know what? I need to drink before every show and after every show. No, I'm only kidding.
I think Amanda and I will be having a few stiff drinks tonight after we get through the first week of the Ben, Rob and Robbo show.
Well deserved.
But I've got to say, look, I hear what you're saying, and gambling is a real problem. And I'm not saying we shouldn't be doing things about gambling, but I get worried when we have governments deciding what we can and can't do. Nothing is a necessity. Watching television is not a necessity. Are we going to ban television because we haven't got the proper NBN in place? You know, like, we need to actually make people responsible for themselves. We need to say, if you're doing the wrong thing, you need to take action about it. You need to fix it yourself with help. We'll give you help to fix it, but we're not going to solve the problem by taking away gambling from everywhere, because they'll just find somewhere else to do it. They'll meet a guy down the park and play 2-up or something like that. There are always ways to gamble. So the root of the problem is not the actual fact that gambling is available. It's the addictive nature of some people, and that's what we need to deal with. I've left everyone speechless. Fabulous. All right, on that note,
I was wondering whether or not I needed to send you like a gambling anonymous card, like maybe you're protecting a secret gambling habit that you've got going now. Robert McKnight is on the slots again. Hope you get the free spins.
Well, speaking of the slots, I'm trying to make a segue, and it's a terrible segue. Let's bring in Aaron Young from the Ticker Newsroom. Aaron, save us. We are descending into World War III here at the Ben
How am I a
Robbo
slot?
Show. I have no idea where I was trying to go with that. I really don't. Have you got the latest news headlines
Fantastic.
for us?
A weekend, and he's floating the idea of banning television.
No, I'm not. Absolutely not.
And now I'm a slot. All right. Well, I think there's a letter that needs to be changed. But anyway, let's move on. Now the news. Hotline Bling, the big four banks have established new hotlines for customers to call so they can receive bridging finance before the JobKeeper payments kick in next month. The Treasurer made the announcement just a short time ago. Banks have also now agreed to expedite the processing of bridging finance applications, confirming they will be taken to the front of the queue. Paper pushing nearly 590,000 job seekers and other related applications have now been processed in the last few weeks, with the PM announcing that it is more than we normally do in a year. The PM has commended efforts of those who have processed the massive amount of applications, including 3,000 extra staff at the ATO, another 5,000 at Services Australia. We're staying put. The Chief Medical Officer, Brendan Murphy, has said while it is very hard to estimate the timeframes for relaxing COVID-19 measures, he doesn't expect Australia to reopen its borders well within the next 3 to 4 months. Dr Murphy has said one exception could be for New Zealand. At this stage, such an arrangement was quite speculative. Boeing Nose-Diving, the aircraft manufacturer, has announced plans to reduce its workforce by 10%, cutting costs due to the aviation crisis caused by coronavirus. The layoffs will impact the unit manufacturing the 787 and the 777 long-haul aircraft, as well as the troubled 737 MAX. And we mentioned Bunnings yesterday. We can now tell you it's going to be a bonza weekend for DIY. Bunnings urging us to get in early, plan your DIY projects ahead of time. Stores preparing to be overwhelmed with customers over the Anzac Day weekend. The home improvement giant encouraging shoppers to use services such as click and collect, with increasing fears that large crowds are heading to store will actually wreak havoc on monitoring social distancing as well. Let's have a look at the weather map now for this Thursday. Melbourne, sunny and 21 degrees. Sydney, sunshine as you see, and 25. Brisbane, 28 degrees. Perth, 24. And Adelaide, I think those are clouds over the sunshine. It is 22 degrees. Let's check the markets now. The local market investors not too happy, as you see there. They've helped Australian stocks. It was in positive territory, but has dipped straight back down after a strong opening there as well. Last night, able to fill up the car for $33. Maybe that's why. In the US, well, to the US now, some positive news. The S&P 500 climbed towards its first gain, a dismal week for the markets, but have a look right at the end as the clock was about to strike 4 and the markets were about to shut. There was a drop. So what's that about? We'll find out. That's it, you're up to date. You are watching Ticker. Now back to the most handsome men on the, well, Ticker.
And it's only me. Thank you, Amanda, for not taking the 4 shot there. It's interesting, Aaron. I was at Bunnings last weekend, or went to go to Bunnings, and they are doing the social distancing inside.
Is this for the new set?
Yes, I actually am thinking of getting a new set. Funny you say that. But I went there to get a few things, and social distancing was happening inside, but they had a big queue outside. No one there was practicing social distancing. So the whole idea of what they were trying to achieve was lost.
100%. I was at Chadstone the other day walking past Kmart, and in store, you know, it's like no one can look at each other, but outside, everyone was just bumping into each other to rush into this queue, and you're like, what on earth is going on in this world? But anyway.
I know. People haven't got a clue, but that's the world we live in, I think. So, mate...
I mean, you guys are taking social distancing to a whole new level.
Yes. I've always refused to be in a room with those two men because it gets a little crazy when we do.
That's not true. That we've had sleepovers. That's not true. Yeah, that's right.
I wasn't involved in the sleepover.
All right, Aaron, I think we're getting too personal here. We'll catch you next week. Thank
See
you
where
for
I take things?
Yeah,
Thanks, Aaron.
Of course.
Well, I'll do crosses from Ticker, he says. We'll do it into your show. I think he's regretting that decision. Thank you, Aaron. We'll see you next week. All right. Every day we have a group of regulars who will be here to bring you up to date with what's happening in the world. On Mondays, we're talking TV with Steve Mulk. On Tuesdays, Sam Dastiari is talking politics, and don't he and Ben have a few discussions going on the table at the moment. Last week was an absolute crackerjack. On Wednesdays, we're talking to the list king, Bruno Boucher, and his DIY disaster segment yesterday was absolutely fantastic. I don't know what he'll be bringing us next week, but I just cannot wait. And on Thursdays, it's the lovely Joe Casamento, who'll be talking movies and pop culture. And in actual fact, Joe Casamento is with us right now. Hello, Joe. Welcome to the Ben, Rob and Robbo
I'm
show.
so glad I'm here. I didn't know if I'd turn up.
Well, you did turn up, and
I did.
Well, hang on. Were you thinking of not turning up, Joe?
No. I'm sitting here. I've even arranged my set. Look how beautiful it looks. But just, you know, technologically, I am a disaster. So I was sitting here thinking, am I actually hooked in?
Well, you've done a good job. But I tell you what, the first thing you want to do is take Robbo to issue. The restless leg syndrome is the topic that will not go away this week. Robbo brought it up.
I know, Robbo. I think you've probably learned to use another example by now. Am I right?
Well, Casamento, can I say quickly, just on the offset, you are wonderful, you're very pretty, and please be kind to me. You look lovely. Please be kind.
I am being kind to you, but I'm guessing you've never been pregnant with twins. Am I right?
Well, weirdly, I have been pregnant with triplets, but not twins, and I didn't have restless leg syndrome with the triplets.
So, Joe,
I can assure you restless leg syndrome is a real thing. And to answer your question, Rob, it is not just that sort of nervous ants in your pants kind of thing that a lot of people with a lot of energy have. It's something that happens when you're in bed and it's like a spontaneous thing and you can't sleep with it. It's actually awful. And during pregnancy, the doctors told me it was due to iron deficiency, which does actually kind of go into your argument, Robbo, where pharmaceutical companies probably tailored what was just basic iron tablets and said it was for restless leg syndrome. So there you are, it's iron deficiency.
Correct. Well, there you go. All right, let's move on to what you're actually here to talk about, and movies. And Joe, cinemas are shut down. So what is happening? What is the future of films in this country? How are they being distributed?
Well, it's really interesting times for Hollywood and the film world as a whole, like most industries, who are finding themselves in lockdown now and unable to distribute in the way they traditionally did in big theatres. Interestingly, today in the southern states of the US, one of the states, Georgia, one of the governors there has said he's opening up cinemas this weekend. And even Trump has kind of said, and they will, of course, still have to socially distance, being, I think, about 10 per cinema. But In terms of releases, the theatre companies have pushed everything back till the end half of the year and next year, some into 2022. But the biggest news, I think, is that the release of Trolls, the second Trolls film, a few weeks ago, straight to on-demand and streaming services, was a game, because this film, Trolls World Tour, not only broke all previous box office records in terms of digital releases, it earned a lot of money and really put, I guess, the cinemas on notice that you can do a good release and make a lot of money out of something too. Now, the question remains whether that was because parents are going crazy in lockdown and around the bend, so, pre-ordering a children's flick is going to be a really popular time right now. But it also, and the other question was, it had a massive marketing push, I think 14,000 million tweets in the week leading up to it. But it was the biggest pre-order on digital services and right now sits on the top of all those on-demand services currently. So it is a really big question mark for the industry. And Scoobs, the new animated Warner Brothers Scooby-Doo flick with Zac Efron and Mark Wahlberg, announced it will also release on May 14, which was its cinema release date, but it is now. I saw that.
No. Okay, no, that was tough. No, Joe.
On May 14 on video.
No, Joe. I need to apologise for that. What I was trying to do there, it's an old signal when you're off camera. You go like that so the people in the control room know that you want to talk next. It was nothing to do with you. So I do apologise for that. But it's an old trick. It's used for years.
And I think
the reason I wanted to...
I was trying on the Slack to find the keyboard to write Robbo, you're next, because we don't have the ability to talk. And yes. So, Joe, that wasn't about you, dear.
It wasn't offensive. It meant that I wanted to ask you a question, Joe.
Sure.
So, Joe,
with question, aren't you?
I'm trying to, yes.
You want me to tailor the question because you don't know what the question is.
No, I do know the question. What I'm asking is that there's always been, especially with Netflix and things like that, that there is kind of an argument maybe that we don't need cinemas and you shouldn't have to wait this long to see a movie. But surely the cinema experience and the theatre experience of going to see a movie should surely, survive this pandemic. Your thoughts?
Absolutely. I am so with you, Robbo, and I'm glad you actually mentioned that. It's given me chills. We've called this segment the Choc Top Chats because my cinema experience is something that is so personal to me, and it is truly my favourite place in the world to be transported by the silver screen into another world. And I don't think we will want to read that. Yes, I love my lounge. Yes, I love my PJs. But I want to be able to buy a Choc Top, buy my box of popcorn. I want that shimmer experience for sure. And I think we will all ultimately come back to that. Perhaps some of the films will go straight to on demand. And I think the days of the big studios monopolising when and controlling how we see our films, that will change. But Netflix was changing that anyway, let's be honest.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and Joe,
yes. So
I was also
going to come back.
I'm going to use that as an opportunity, Joe, to jump in there. The week that the isolation kicked in, you and I had tickets to go to the opening of the new A Quiet Place 2, and we missed out on that by, I think it was like a day. My question for you is, do you think with some of those films that they had in the can that were about to get those releases, do you think that they should be following Trolls and releasing those films out on Netflix? Or do you think they're doing the right thing by holding them off and waiting for, governments to allow cinemas to open?
Good question, Ben. And actually, I know Emma Blount and John Krasinski, who directed and starred in the film, have come out and said A Quiet Place is such a shared experience that there's no way they want to release it straight to on-demand services. I think some will, but the bigger blockbusters, we're talking the next James Bond, the next Fast and Furious, all those amazing cinema films, they need to be worldwide on box office, and I think they're prepared to wait.
Joe, what have you been watching this week?
Yes, so we called this segment the Choc Top Chats, Rob, didn't we? And we decided when we came up with it that it was going to be about the new release of the day. But while we are in lockdown, I wanted to draw your attention to the film that won the best film at the Academy Awards this year. It's a foreign film. It's called Parasite. You can currently stream it on Stan. We've got a little grab.
I'm deadly serious.
근데 지금 진짜로 이상한 게 뭔 것 같아.
If you were just listening to your audio then, it would have been all about the music. Oh, I've lost you, Rob.
Have you
Rob,
got me
you're
now?
not in my ear. Oh, I got you now. Good. I thought it was
I'm
me
hitting the
again.
wrong buttons everywhere, Joe. Don't worry about me. It's been one of those days
Good,
again.
as long as it's not me.
No, but we've got to move quickly. How many choc tops are you getting that?
I am doing us a favour, persevere through the subtitles. Don't turn it off. It is the best thing you will see in a long time. I'm giving this 5 choc tops, even 5.5 choc tops out of 5. It is a brilliant masterpiece. Do yourselves a favour and do it. I promise you, you won't regret it.
Now, next week, I'd like to talk to you about Top Gun because I'm very keen to. It's got an amazing trailer which we'll show, and I also want to find out what's happening with the release and all the other juicy goss. So, because that's going to be a huge one this year.
That is the one we're all sweating on. Val Kilmer, Tom Cruise, back as Maverick and Iceman. I think if anything can get us through Corona, it will be the idea of getting to see that.
All right, Joe. Thank you very much for that. We'll see you next week.
Bye, fellas.
Bye, Joe.
All right, now it's time for the random live shot of the day.
You never know where you'll end up with the random live shot of the day.
And today we're taking you to Melbourne. Yes, Melbourne, where it's a shattered? I think I'm shattered. It's a scattered showers and 20 degrees. Oh, jeez. I think that tells you the kind of week we're having. It's going to hit a top of 20 degrees. And that is a beautiful view of Melbourne. It's looking sunny, Melbourne. Ben, down there, has it been sunny today, or has it? Is it looking like showers are coming? Oh,
we went. It was interesting that we just cut to that because I think we just caught my partner. He was just going into the city. He said he was going to work, but I could see him crossing the bridge to see if Crown Casino was open. It's outrageous.
All right. What a classic. All right. Well, while we're talking to you, Ben, it's time for the entertainment report. What have you got for us today?
Absolutely. And, you know, with the COVID-19 happening, it's been an interesting time for the entertainment industry and especially for Tom Cruise. Like, Tom Cruise at the moment is supposed to be working on the 7th Mission Impossible film, but they had to put the brakes on that. I think we've got some footage now of what's actually happening at the moment in Hollywood. Well, for Tom Cruise, getting back to work won't be a Mission Impossible, but there is a struggle between the desire to reopen for business and the need to protect the health and safety of its workforce. Right now, studios, producers and union members are trying to come up with a new social distancing way of business. And on April 13th, the Directors Guild of America have contacted Steven Soderbergh to lead the force to determine what is going to happen and how we're going to get the industry back, you know, on the road. Interesting that they got Steve Soderbergh to do that, who was the director of Contagion, though.
What else?
Also making news is when it comes to women and discussing their age, much like religion and politics, we don't normally talk about it. But for a MasterChef contestant this week who announced, which is Poe, and Poe's still in the competition, she revealed that she was 47 years of age, which put a lot of the viewers into overdrive. They couldn't believe that this woman was 47 years of age. She looks pretty good. I think it's made people all around Australia in particular question what her beauty secrets are rather than what her recipes are. I don't know. What about you, Rob? Do you think that Do you reckon Poe's looking pretty youthful? Would you have guessed 47?
I wouldn't have guessed 47, but I'm terrible with ages. I would have guessed 52. No, I'm joking. I'm joking, Bo.
Happy birthday,
Okay.
Bo. Yeah.
What else have you got for us? We've got Stevie Jacobs on the line waiting to go, Ben, so we need to have power on.
Okay, well, I'm going to skip one of my stories to move on to another one. Real Housewives of Melbourne, Gamble Bro, had released a song last week, you know, an isolation song, something a little bit happy and a little bit fun. And once the song came out, look, it came out to some very mixed reviews about what it sounded like. I personally haven't heard it all yet, but some of the lyrics in the song sound a little bit entertaining. So I think that is going to be very interesting when they decide to release this song. The song is called Classy. Some of the lyrics are, "You don't need champagne or Louis Vuitton when you've got the right attitude." Anyway, this song is set to be released, and I also was lucky enough to talk to Gamble this morning, and she's got a special message for us, letting us know exactly what is happening with this song and when we'll get to see it.
Published a song called
Roll clip.
Classy on Friday and had to pull it back down due to some issues with it. Anyway, we will have it right back up again as soon as possible without those issues. So stay tuned, and I hope you do listen to the next version of Classy and enjoy it. Bye for now. And sorry for that. Anyway, how embarrassing.
She's a cracker. She's a cracker, but there's no indication on what those issues were, Ben.
Well, look, as far as I'm aware, I think the song was taken down. Originally, a lot of people were saying that it was taken down because she might have been embarrassed of the song. But when I spoke to Gamble, she's very proud of it. They've been working on the lyrics, which she wrote herself. There may have been a few issues with who owned the rights to some of the music. But look, that's being ironed out at the moment, and we are going to get that song on iTunes happening. And let me tell you, from what I've heard, it's a really fun song, and I think that people in isolation are going to love it.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Ben. I look forward to your entertainment reports. You are the man in the know. We'll have more of you delivering those next week. But in the meantime, we've got a very special guest standing by. He's one of Australia's most loved personalities. He's been on our screens probably longer than he'd care to admit. Steve Jacobs has worked in television and radio. He's been a TV actor and a presenter, of course, for many years. He brought us the weather on the Today Show. Now he's returning to his roots with the launch of 4 music stations across the country. Stevie, welcome to the Ben, Rob and Robbo Show. Good on you, Stevie.
His screen is frozen.
We've lost Stevie. Ben and Robbo, why don't you talk amongst yourselves for a moment?
I've got an actual interesting story there, Robbo. Do you know that once I woke up from a really lovely sleep, and lying next to me was Stephen Jacobs. I didn't go to bed with Stephen Jacobs, so I was really quite concerned as to how he got there.
So if it was that good, how come you just kind of woke up with a good sleep?
Look, Stephen Jacobs is probably watching this and thinking, "Oh my gosh, what have I done?" But he's a
No, you know what the
he's
problem
a happily
is?
married man.
You know what the problem is? We've actually pre-recorded this interview, and I can't ask him that question. But here's what we pre-record some interviews. I'm always upfront and honest about that, Robbo. I've said
I know.
A short time ago.
No one told me.
Although there is a funny story, but I can't. We are so running out of time. Robbo asked to ask a question during one of our other pre-records because he didn't realise it wasn't live. But anyway,
I'm new to this.
Stevie Jacobs joined us this morning. Stevie, welcome to the Rob and Robbo Show.
Thank you very much, boys. And I don't know if I've been on air longer than I'd like to remember, but it certainly has been pretty much since I was a kid. I've been on telly. I started at Win TV when I was a young kid doing TV shows there when I was about 14. Started full-time there at around about 18, and I've been on a roll with the Nine Network for about 35 years ever since. So it's nice to be back with them.
Well, it's amazing. Even your time on All Together Now was with the Nine Network. So, you really have been a Channel 9 boy all this time.
It's been a great family, I mean, the Melbourne studios, they really had that kind of old school Hollywood feel about them. I mean, that's where TV started, and you had your Burt Newtons and your Daryl Summers and your Hey Hey in there recording every week, and it just had this amazing vibe about it, and you were friends with all of the cameramen, friends with all of the bosses. You know, you'd get invited into the boss's bar every Friday night for drinks after work, and then you'd go on ski trips with the cameraman. It really, really was one big family. And wow, this really takes me back. You know, Jane Hall, I mean, she's still doing radio.
Yes.
And we were great mates. We lived together as friends for around about a year. And
really?
Beautiful John English, who sadly passed a few years ago. Yeah, Jane and I were great mates. We decided to rent a house together when we were doing All Together Now. We lived together for about a year, and we had so much fun. She's just an absolute cracker.
That's dangerous, living with someone you're working with, but it obviously worked because you guys had great chemistry on screen, playing brother and sister, of course. So
Yeah.
it really was a family behind the scenes.
Yeah, well, considering I was probably old enough to be her father, it was a weird family, but I was playing, nobody really knows this, but
It didn't
I
look
was
that-
playing a 15-year-old and I was 26.
Oh, I didn't know that. So that's one. For the
No, I
books.
don't think anyone actually realized. So my first real professional acting job out of high school, and I had to wear a school uniform, and I was 26 years old. It felt very, very strange. I think I was like maybe a year or two younger than Rebecca Gibney, and she was sort of playing my mother figure.
I genuinely had no idea, but it shows you had the youthful looks. Look, as you said, you went on and you spent a lot of time. You sort of came back into the fold with the Today Show, and that was really a magical time when you were on that show and really taking us to places, doing these bizarre things that went viral. You went sort of viral around the world before becoming viral became a thing.
I became viral with a video where I was attacked by, well, firstly, I was attacked by a pelican at Taronga Zoo, and then I was attacked by a black chicken. There's the Irish dance, which kind of launched my career early on in the piece.
And
I
that's you with
actually got
Jay
flown
Leno?
over to America to do the Jay Leno show after I got attacked by the pelican. And he asked some Irish dancing on the streets of Los Angeles. And then there's the old pelican attack. I will never, ever let down. But some of the beautiful moments, I'm just not good with birds, basically, or with Carl. So
That's true. You're
I've
being
been
chased
attacked
by penguins there. But
pretty
there's
there.
the chicken.
There's the black chicken. Now, that one was actually voted by a website in America as the funniest video under 10 seconds on the internet. Now, when I interviewed Donald Trump, of course, which was probably about 12 years ago, I think I might have been the first person ever to ask him, would he ever consider becoming president? I think the same year The Simpsons actually did an episode where they made Donald Trump president. Everyone thought it was absolutely ridiculous. So it was basically Bart Simpson and myself that saw it coming.
Mate, you must look back with fondness about your time on the Today Show. It certainly was a ride.
It is the best job that anyone could ever have in their entire life, to be traveling around the world, seeing all these amazing things, being able to do what you love, broadcast live, bring the world to people at home, have a little bit of fun and do it with a group of mates. I had my Jerry, this crazy Scotsman who I travelled with for 15 years.
We all love
pretty
Jerry.
much the same camera crew. He's just the loveliest man you'll ever meet. He and I are still in contact weekly. We're just the greatest of mates. And in 15 years of travelling on the road together every day, 16 hours a day, we never had one argument, one fight, or one disagreement. And the crew, my best friends, like the audio guy, is the godfather to my children. And we just really became this little, traveling boy band, seeing the world and having fun, and everyone just trying to make it as great entertainment as we possibly could. I mean, it was the best job I've ever had in my life. And then I sort of say it was the worst job at the same time because it was so grueling, 16-hour days, getting up 3 or 4 o'clock every morning, then traveling till, sometimes 9, 10 o'clock at night to get to your next location. I don't think a lot of people really understood the amount of effort and time that went. It's exhausting, but it is more rewarding than it is exhausting.
I ran into you a few times at airports around the country. I was traveling sporadically, but you were traveling all the time, and you would often be just trying to get a few winks in the Qantas Club or wherever you can on a lounge, just so you could catch up on your sleep. Because you're right, you're going from one location at one point in Australia to another location And you're on air the following morning. You don't even get time to stop and take it all in, really.
And it's such an enormous country, Rob. I don't think people understand. I remember one day, this was only a year or two ago, we had to get from country South Australia to country Queensland, and that was 16 hours to get from one spot to that. We could have flown to Los Angeles quicker than it took to get from South Australia to Queensland. But the funny thing is that when Grant Denyer was doing the same job on Channel 7, I used to bump into him at airports all the time. And we'd be like zombies. And you know, you just kind of bump into each other going, oh, hi, what have you been doing? And you just really take it for granted. He'd be like, oh, yeah, I've been diving with whales in Western Australia. I'd be like, yeah, I've been out on a $5 million yacht on the coast of Queensland. And, your eyes are hanging out of your head. And then you sort of take stock every now and then. You go, oh, my God, this is just the most magical job that you could ever possibly hope for. Now, I know a lot of people who do the job only lasted for 2 or 3 years because it is so physically grueling. And the fact that I managed to do it for, close to 15 years, I don't think anyone really understand where I got that energy from. But I think it was just the passion for live TV. For me, live is what it's all about. It's like walking a tightrope without a net. Live TV, you never know what's going to happen. And it's when those moments go wrong, like you get attacked by a bird or somebody says something silly or everything falls to pieces. That's when you get the best television. And that's what I love about it. Because no matter how many times I did it, I would still get that adrenaline rush before I went on air every time.
Well, I'll be completely honest, Stevie. I miss seeing you on the weather every day. I think you did something very special each day and brought something to each and every cross, and you're sorely missed from the Today Show from this viewer's perspective. Did the job take a toll on your family and your lifestyle at home?
Well, yeah, it had to. I mean, it's just, it's exhausting. When you're away for, sometimes 3, 4, 5 days a week, you just really miss that connection and that family life and just being home, being able to sleep in your own bed. And not only that, be doing 16-hour days, and then you'd come home for the weekend and your family wanted your 100% attention. So, you had to have friends over for dinner on a Friday night, and then you had to play with the kids all day Saturday. I can't begin to tell you the amount of times that I either fell asleep in my dinner or in a bathroom, sitting on a toilet at a restaurant somewhere, in the middle of a dinner party. I just need to go and sit down for 5 seconds, and you'd just be asleep, and people would be looking for you and knocking on doors. It was pretty grueling, and that's why now my kids. I've got 2 beautiful little girls who are my life, Isabella and Francesca. They're 8 and 6, and I realised when Today Show said, we want you back out on the road again. It's going to be like 5 or 6 days a week on the road, which is what that role is all about. I couldn't commit to that amount of time because my kids really need me at the moment, and I want to be there with them. So it was the best decision I made, but it was very hard because I didn't have a job to go to. So it's very difficult when you want to provide for your kids, but you want to be there with them as well. And you're kind of a traveling salesman. And that's why I'm so excited about this new job that's brought me back into the fold and with the 9 Network and given me the flexibility to be able to look after my kids. It's like a dream come true.
Absolutely. And of course, the new job is a radio gig, which I want to talk about. I just want to say I'm one of the few people, I think, Stevie, who can understand what you're saying about the family life, because while I wasn't traveling like you, I would often fall asleep. The game I had with the kids is I would be on the floor. I'd always end up with me on the floor half asleep while they were jumping all over me because I was that exhausted. And that does have an impact on family life. And it is hard as a father and a husband, and it does put a stretch on those relationships.
Yeah, it really does. It's exhausting. I guess what you're trying to do as a dad is provide for your family and provide for your kids. And it's a really fine line because the job that I was doing was all encompassing. It's either you're in 100% or you're out. And it was really fantastic last year because they moved me into the studio more last year when we had Deb and Georgie hosting. I brought a little bit of the male energy and a bit of excitement to the show. And so I was finding myself more and more in the studio, which I absolutely loved. And I was hoping that that's the direction that we would really move in with the weather. But then they kind of changed, the format. They brought Carl back and Ali, and they were like, no, we want the weather back out on the road again.
Which,
And,
as a
so
producer,
well,
I really do understand that, because
me too.
as much as you were in studio, you will do everything to make it work. I missed you being out on location, I will say, but you're balancing that. This is why this new gig is so perfect for you, because you are coming back within the Nine family. You are going to be on radio with the big relaunch of 2UE, which is filtering through to Magic and 4BH and 6GT. So there's an interesting evolution in your career, because you started in radio and you're going back. That gives you that balance between family and actually the creativity of doing radio.
I started at 2UE's Sky Radio, which is their syndicated network, back in around 1994, I think it was. I was doing a show for Channel 9 in Melbourne, which was called Saturday at Rick's. It was a Saturday morning live show for 3 hours, and they were kind of grooming it to be the next Hey Hey It's Saturday. And it was just wonderful, and it was really taking off. And this lovely man by the name of Brendan Sheedy, who was running Sky Radio, tuned in, loved what I was doing, loved the show, and said, I would love you to come and do some radio, do a weekly top 10 countdown. So I used to fly up to Sydney every Friday, and we'd syndicate out to about 52 radio stations, Friday night, top 10 countdown. And he's sort of become my mentor. I'm still in contact with him on a regular basis, and that's 20-something years later. And it's really nice. I'm getting his advice, being back in radio. And the great thing about these stations is they're really legacy stations. They've got these amazing heritage. I think Magic goes back to the, I don't know, 1800s or something ridiculous. There's
right before radio was even invented.
Before it was even invented. It's just amazing. And I think these stations, were well known as music stations, and they went to talkback and then sports talkback, and really lost a lot of their audience. So to be able to be there, it obviously just didn't work for them at that time. And that's a really good thing, I think, at the moment. I got a beautiful email from a woman this morning who basically said, thank goodness that these stations are coming back to music. She was a Melbourne listener, so from Magic. She said, these are the songs that I grew up. This is the soundtrack of my life. And with everything that's bad in the world at the moment, with everyone being locked in and COVID, she said, I'm kind of a bit tired of having to listen to everyone's opinion and people talking all day long. It's exhausting. So being able to go to a station where it's predominantly music and be able to feel good, and some of those songs that you grew up with, and that's what we're really trying to get across. And being there at the start of this to rebuild and relaunch these stations is just absolutely amazing for me to be a part of that, and to be going back to radio at this time and letting the music, I think, breathe, letting the music tell the story. It's just all heading in the right direction, I think, and a lot of excitement around at Nine Radio about these heritage stations and bringing them all back.
Tom Maloney is certainly making a lot of changes since he's assumed the responsibility for radio. And this is music predominantly for the 80s and 90s music, isn't it? These stations?
Yeah, 70s, 80s and 90s. So I guess it's sort of, our generation, sort of anywhere from 35, 40 to 60 plus. We play a few, banging old classic 60s tracks, into the 70s, a bit of Creedence and Doobie Brothers, and 80s, which is really my generation. That's when I kind of really started to understand, appreciate, and feel music for the first time. It was probably the lowest decade of fashion in history, but the music, just the big hair and the big melodies and the synths, and the Cure and Love Cats and Prince, and my favourite song of all time is by the Thompson Twins, which is "Hold Me Now." It's a bit of a classic from the 80s. It's a great song. I just love 80s music, and then into the 90s as well with some fantastic tracks. So it's really wall to wall. I'm on from 6 to 10 every morning, and it's just wall to wall classic tracks. And at the moment, it's a little bit like a free Spotify. You turn the radio on and you just music 24 hours a day. I'll pop in the morning and sort of talk about, we'll update with news, sport, weather, traffic, talk about some of the songs. I'll dust out some of the oldies from the record collection and play some of those hidden gems that people haven't heard for a long time. And I think the time is right. People really need something that they can maybe just stop and stop worrying about what's going on. And if they're locked up in their house, just find a song that they can just tools down and have a little dance around the house for a few minutes. That's really what it's all about.
Well, you can hear Stevie's dulcet tones from Monday on 2UE 954, Magic 1278, 4BH on 882, and 6GT at DAB+. Stevie, thank you for joining us today.
Rob, it's lovely to talk to you again, and it is great to be back in the fold. And being on the radio is something that I'm super excited about. I'm about to head over there now to start doing some recording for the radio show, and I couldn't be more thrilled to be back with the Nine Network, the family that I've been with for 35 years, and heading in a different direction that gives me flexibility with my life, with my kids. It's a really happy time for me right now, and it's really positive and moving forward. And I'm hoping that the listeners will tune in and they'll feel the same way. They'll get just a little bit of a buzz about the songs that they love, and having a familiar face and a familiar voice that they know from the Today Show. And I think it's onwards and upwards for these heritage stations, and keep listening.
Mate, I wish you all the best. Thanks for being with us. I tell you what, I speak too much because we are so over time. Ben wants to point out that he didn't sleep with Stevie. It was a challenging Big Brother, but we've got to go. We'll see you next week over to the Ticket Newsroom. Bye-bye!
It's the Ben, Rob and Robbo, Ben, Rob and Robbo, Ben,